beautiful downtown Millheim, in the smack dab center of the Keystone State. This is Lou Bryson with Seen Through a Glass, a podcast that's mostly about food and drink in central Pennsylvania. Welcome to episode 82, Hershey, Don't Say Chocolate. That's right, we're going to visit the sweetest place on earth, Hershey, Pennsylvania. But this episode isn't about chocolate, hard as that may be to believe. It's even harder to avoid when you're there because the whole town really does smell like chocolate. But while chocolate is literally why this town exists and what keeps it in business, from the factory to the amusement park, to the arena, to the Union Hall of Chocolate Workers Local 464, once you get there, you'll realize there are other reasons to like this town. Trogs Brewing realized that and moved here from Harrisburg. And the subject of our interview, Hidden Still Spirits, moved here from Lebanon. I'll interview master distiller Coty Edwards. We'll get to that, and places I visited, and a few that I didn't. It was a jam-packed day. And there's a short, joyful interview with Matt Gundrum, director of brewery operations for Iron Hill, at the miraculously revived brewpub that had just opened 2 days before I got there. And we'll talk about what I'm drinking today. But, and this is the bad news, there won't be a smack dab in the center spot. It's hard times for the hospitality and tourism industry, you may have noticed. The Happy Valley Adventure Bureau has reluctantly ended their sponsorship of the podcast. I bear them no ill will. It's been a productive 2 years for all of us, and they've been very good to me. I want to thank them for their support of the show and wish everyone there, and all the members, the very best. And I guess that means I'm looking for new sponsors. It does help with the expenses. I'll remind you again that I pay for almost everything mentioned on the show, and I tell you when I don't. And on that note, let's get at what I'm drinking today. What I'm drinking today is a special release from Heaven Hill, the Deatsville 13-year-old bourbon. This is a special bottling for me for a couple of reasons. One is because the write-up comes from Susan Wall, the company's vice president of American whiskey, someone who I've known almost as long as I've been writing about whiskey. She's someone I've met and traveled with on the journey. The other part is that this whiskey connects me directly to someone who is an important part of that journey for me, Parker Beam. I know you've heard me talk about Parker before. You may have even heard the quote I'm about to relate. I was talking to Parker about all the different kinds of bourbon warehouses in Kentucky, the ironclad rick houses, the brick and stone cycling warehouses, the single-story warehouses, and one other type I'd seen a few of, the tiered warehouses. These have a broad base, and then a setback to the next floor, and then another setback. They look almost like a train station. Parker told me there weren't many of them, probably because they just didn't hold as many barrels, and that's when he delivered this judgment about why people built and placed warehouses the way they did. Well, that's just one guy saying, this worked for me, that's why I do it. And another guy saying, oh, hell, that don't work at all. Pure Parker. Well, this whiskey was aged in one of the last active tiered warehouses on the third floor of Rickhouse AA at what Heaven Hill calls the Deatsville campus. It's some of the last whiskey coming from those warehouses as Heaven Hill retires them from active aging. It's 13 years old at 109 proof, and yes, this was a sample supplied by Heaven Hill. Susan, Parker, let's try this stuff. It is, I gotta say, I poured this before I started the recording, and it's been teasing me ever since because it is one of those whiskeys that wants to come out of the glass. And it is, wow, just, there are some whiskeys, when I do judging, I'll sniff a whiskey and I'll just say, classic bourbon. And this is that stuff. It's got the spicy notes from the oak. It's got vanilla. It's got the sweetness from the corn. There's some caramel, some fruity candy notes. Wow, it's really just ringing all the bells. There's even a little bit of like juicy berry and some crystalline sugar there. Wow. Can't wait. Wow. And I got to say at 109 proof, this is friendly. Oak comes through heavier on the end. Now that's interesting. It gets minty, and then there's a little, almost like a little flat space just before the finish really kicks in and the spice and the sweetness comes back. Let's see if I can recreate that. Yeah. Just as it goes actually down my gullet, there's almost like a full second of, like it goes away and then comes back fully, the finish. I got to tell you, if you do spend the money and get a bottle of this, because I think the suggested retail is $200, be careful, because you are going to want to just pour this in a glass and drink it. I have to think that some of that is coming from the warehouse, because like I said in the Whiskey Masterclass books, everything has an effect. It may be a 1% effect, but I have to believe that the tiered warehouse, because Parker said there was more of an airflow with them, that they really pulled more air in at the bottom, kind of because of the, I don't know, he didn't use the words, but I almost wonder if it's some kind of Bernoulli effect, because the warehouse gets narrower and the air speeds up. I don't know. But, that's just some guy saying, oh, hell, that don't work at all. Wow, I love that away and back effect. I don't know what causes that. I don't remember ever feeling that before, but that's pretty good whiskey. Wow, it really is all there. And then it isn't. And then it's back. Pretty cool. Oh, whew. Okay. Well, that was a good little trip. Let's take another one to Hershey. I do love the town histories, and Hershey has an interesting one. With almost all the towns in central Pennsylvania we visited together, there's been a backstory, some going back to the mid-1700s, colonial-era pioneers, sometimes co-opting or just grabbing a native settlement that was already there. Usually started with a land grant or a purchase, a hopeful handful of settlers, a turnpike, then a railroad. Well, that's not the story of Hershey. Derry Township was lightly settled by Scots-Irish Presbyterians and Pennsylvania Dutch. It was a farming area, largely dairy farms, by the late 1800s. And Milton Hershey was born there in 1857 in a Mennonite family. Spoke Pennsylvania Dutch at home. He left school after 4th grade, and after a short apprenticeship as a printer, was apprenticed to a candy maker in Lancaster at the age of 14. After working there for a few years and then trying his luck in Denver and working in New York, he returned to central Pennsylvania and opened the Lancaster Caramel Company in 1883. He made caramels with fresh local milk, and the business was a big success. He sold it for $1 million in 1900, 2 factories employing over 1,200 people. Not bad for an elementary school dropout. But for Milton Hershey, caramels were now passé. He'd become interested in chocolate at the Chicago's World Fair in 1893, the well-known Columbian Exposition. Chocolate was a luxury item at the time, and Hershey would make it an everyday treat. He bought land back home in Derry Township, built his factory, and the first Hershey bar was made in 1900. The iconic Hershey Kisses followed in 1907. And by this time, the town of Hershey had been built. Built by Milton S. Hershey. Hershey was an archetypal company town with housing built by the company for the workers, modern homes with electricity, indoor plumbing, central heating systems. The factories prominently featured the Hershey name, and it was spelled out in plantings in extensive public gardens. It still is. I just saw it last week. The town had a trolley system, free public schools, and a vocational school for orphan and underprivileged boys. That school would become the Milton Hershey School, and in 1918, Hershey would transfer most of his assets to the Milton Hershey School Trust, including control of the chocolate company, and eventually HersheyPark and the Hotel Hershey. The trust still owns it all. They also funded and operate the Milton S. Hershey Medical Center, a teaching hospital. My father got his cancer treatment there, and Penn State operates the medical school. I actually have a small connection to the Hershey plant. My paternal grandmother worked at the chocolate factory in the 1920s. I don't remember much of what Mama may have told me about it, except that she darkly warned me to never eat the Mr. Goodbar chocolates. I don't know. It wasn't all roses in the company town. The workers chafed a bit at the paternalism, and when the Depression came, the company cut hours and the annual bonuses for workers. Milton was no longer running the company day to day. New President William Murray was. In 1937, the workers decided to unionize with the CIO. Their initial request for pay increases met with success, but the union organizers were laid off not long after the negotiations ended. President Murray said it was just regular seasonal layoffs, but it seemed suspiciously targeted to the union, and the workers voted to strike in April of 1937. It was a sit-down strike. Workers occupied the buildings and sat on the roofs to be visible. They were solid in their strike, but everyone else in the company, including the hundreds of individual salesmen across the company, were idled by the stoppage. It wasn't popular with the local dairy farmers either, who had suddenly lost a market for their milk. The farmers and company loyalists marched through the neighboring town of Palmyra to support the company on the 5th day of the strike. And the next morning, thousands of them confronted the striking workers at the factory, telling them to get out and get back to work. What happened next depends on who does the telling. There may have been an agreement between the union and management that they would end the strike and leave the building safely. But there definitely was a riot, and the pro-company group attacked the strikers, beating a few dozen of them severely. The strike was broken, and the CIO discredited. FDR's new National Labor Relations Board investigated and required the company to allow an open union election. The workers chose to affiliate with the AFL, which, of course, would later merge with the CIO. They remain organized with the AFL-CIO to this day, and the Union Hall is prominently located on Chocolate Avenue. There have been no serious labor issues since then. Just an aside, when I researched the strike, I found an article on it in the New York Times archive. And on that day, Saturday, April 3rd, 1937, the Times was full of news of strikes. GM, Ford, coal mines in the Appalachians. The CIO had organized strikes across the country. They had not all gone well. The front page that day had a story with the headline, CIO Starts Purge of Red Membership. There had been a news sheet circulated at Hershey titled The Chocolate Barb, that was signed by the Communist Party of Hershey, Pennsylvania. Were there actual communists in the CIO? That's likely. Were there actual organized communists in Hershey? That seems a lot less likely, but I'm going down another rabbit hole. Things have changed little since then. Hershey has been a huge tourist destination since before I was a little boy, between the chocolate tour, the amusement park and the zoo, and the arena complex, where major musical acts perform and the Hershey Bears AHL franchise plays. I've been to a wedding reception at the Hotel Hershey. I remember seeing the iconic Hershey Kiss streetlights literally all my life. They were installed in 1963. I'm sure I saw them when my parents took us to the amusement park when I was young, packed up in our old green Chevy wagon. The park's been around even longer. HersheyPark opened as a picnic spot with a bandstand way back in 1906. Milton Hershey wanted a place for the workers and their families to be able to relax on weekends, picnic, hear a band, and go boating on Spring Creek. A merry-go-round was added 2 years later, and by 1933, there was a much larger carousel, the scenic scale railroad, a 1,500-seat amphitheater, the zoo, a ballroom, a flume ride, and the park's first roller coaster, the Wildcat. The Wildcat would be replaced in 1946 by the Comet, which I've ridden, and you can still ride today, ranked in the top 10 wooden coasters in America. Of course, the Phoenix at Knoebels is widely considered the best wooden roller coaster in the world. We're pretty lucky in Pennsylvania. I just wish someone would buy and restore the historic Leap the Dips coaster at Lakemont Park in Altoona. It's a unique ride. Hidden Still Spirits is a relative newcomer to Hershey, but they managed to snag a location that's near the center of town, right beside HersheyPark. You can see and hear the Candymonium coaster just past the parking lot. Candymonium opened in 2020 and is the tallest, longest, and fastest coaster in the park. Sorry, I got sidetracked again. I love roller coasters. So we're going to talk about how Hidden Still got to Hershey in the interview. We'll just skip over that for now. I will briefly mention in the interview that I did a book signing with tasting whiskey at their original Lebanon distillery, and it was a night to remember. I sold a lot of books. Thanks, Lebanon. And I remember the cocktails were exceptionally good. So what you need to know about Hidden Still now is that they're primarily a whiskey maker. Their David E. bourbons are, in my opinion, some of the best being made in Pennsylvania. As we'll note in the interview, they're also legally bottling tequila, made in Mexico and shipped here in bulk. Let's get to the interview. Park your car on the lot, or walk down here from Chocolate Avenue, it's not far, and enter the restaurant's soaring spaces. The prominently placed bar is ready to serve, and the menu has some surprising options, like the Lake Erie walleye, a tofu curry, and a kind of poke tuna nachos. You can eat inside or out on a nice day, or split the difference in the back dining room where the glass walls open up. And everything is spotlessly clean. It's quite a place. Here's Coty Edwards, Master Distiller at Hidden Still Spirits.
Hey, I'm here with Coty Edwards. He's the Master Distiller at Hidden Still Spirits in Hershey, Pennsylvania. How you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for letting me in here. Well, you moved from Lebanon. Let's get that whole story. Let's get the Hidden Still story first. Why Hidden Still? Why a distillery in the first place? And how did you wind up moving from Lebanon to Hershey?
Yeah, so we started in Lebanon in August of 2015, and it was a really good learning experience for us, starting in Lebanon, because it was really our first foray in not just being a distillery, but also the hospitality industry, while simultaneously we had a full bar and restaurant. So we learned a ton for about 5 years, which brings us close to 2019, and that we temporarily shut down our restaurant to focus on the move up to Hershey.
So that was just an opportunity, or?
Yeah, so Hershey's not the easiest, kind of city to get into.
Right.
There's a lot of people that want to get into it, and,
sure.
The trust kind of has it locked down on who comes in, who goes out.
Okay.
So when the opportunity presented itself, the owner, David Stye, wanted to hop on it. Hershey is, I think, the number one touristed city in Pennsylvania.
Wow.
So just being in that sort of arena, we believed it would have helped us, kind of achieve our dreams. With the type of growth we wanted.
Yeah. Put you on that quicker.
Yeah. So we temporarily shut down our restaurant to focus the move up here. And then obviously COVID happened in March of 2020 and slowed that a little bit. And we spent the majority of 2020 still in Lebanon, and then finally moved up here in October 2020.
Okay.
But because it slowed everything down, construction was way behind, totally outside of our control. So when we moved, the utilities were spotty, the restaurant was completely untouched, but we wanted to get the distillery up and going first so we could start producing again.
Sure.
And then I want to say it was the first week of December, we finally laid down our first drop of Hershey-produced bourbon.
Okay.
And then the restaurant followed suit and opened up in February of 22.
Okay. So why a distillery?
The founder, he comes from the petroleum industry, and he says the petroleum industry makes you want to drink.
Okay.
But no, he kind of said that, bourbon was, always kind of a passion of his. And around that time in 2014, 2015, PA, they changed the laws and made it more advantageous for people to pop up distilleries and easier to grow and so forth.
Yeah, you had more opportunities, really. Things did change. Why Hidden Still?
Hidden Still is kind of like an homage to the illicit, distillation, the moonshiners and so forth.
Yeah.
So.
I just did a moonshining episode 2 episodes ago, so yeah, I'm there with that. What's your story? How did you wind up here? How did you become a distiller?
Yeah.
I mean, that's still not a common thing.
No, it's not. So I definitely would say I took the path less traveled, in life. And, at the time of Hidden Still's opening, I was fresh out of college, and I was my now wife's just loser boyfriend, kind of at a crossroads.
You weren't a drummer, were you?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
All right.
I was at a crossroads with, either furthering my education or, I just wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do. And Hidden Still was, opening up, and I humbly, asked if there was, anything available for me. And, he brought me on, and at the time I was just a laborer, just learning about it. But, I was 23.
Wow.
And you're getting to, make alcohol, you're getting paid to make alcohol. It was a very easy thing to fall in love with and become obsessed with. So that's where it kind of started, of just reading and rereading textbooks, listening to every possible interview, and, you name it, just absorbing, knowledge. Mm-hmm. And the first 4 months I worked under the original master distiller, who also, this was his, first foray. So for 4 months we kind of took a beating together. But then he decided this, wasn't exactly for him. That's when I became the, lead distiller, if you will. Mm-hmm. And those first several years, was, very trying, learning on your own, and, learning on the fly. But
and you mentioned earlier, we walked around and took a tour before we sat down here. You mentioned it was a fairly small staff when you were starting out. Yeah.
Really, up until the past couple of years, we had a skeleton crew. It was just me and my now production manager for a long, long time. And then I want to say in 2022, we hired our first help with packaging. Mm-hmm. It was his name's Larry. He actually still works for us today on a very limited basis. Larry was a retiree from 3 Mile Island.
Wow.
And he came on, and on a part-time 25 hours a week would, help us bottle. And, now our staff is 6 or 7, really mostly on the packaging side.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But nice. The building we're in, big brick building. I mean, I'll have pictures of it that I'll put up on the website. It was a Hershey chocolate building, but you said before that it was a soap factory?
Yeah, so the building's over 100 years old.
Okay.
And its first function, as far back as I understand, it was a soap manufacturer. Then after that was going under, Hershey Foods came in and purchased the property and turned it into the recycling center, where it would take defective, you name it, from the production of chocolate, mm-hmm. and it would get sorted and shipped out here. So I mentioned, some packaging would get sorted, recycled, shells from the cocoa beans and stuff would get sorted here and repurposed to either mulch or fertilizer.
Yeah, actually, our next door neighbor when I was growing up always had the cocoa hull mulch. Yeah, I remember that.
And then candy, even. I mentioned Kit Kats are a big one, because Kit Kats, they're held together by just very thin piece of chocolate. Yeah. So there's a lot of breakage during production. So from what I understand, pigs are big on Kit Kats.
Okay. Yeah, who wouldn't be? So you have a very different still setup than when I did a book signing at Hidden Still in Lebanon, 2017, 2018. Very different still setup. You were running pot stills, hybrid stills.
The one I would classify as a pot column hybrid. It has a four tray, a low reflux column. And then we have it's half in size. So that one's 600 gallons. Then we have a 300 gallon. And I would say that's a pretty traditional pot still. Yeah. It has we call it a copper helmet, but it's.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So, on top. Yeah.
Yeah. But you're running a full on column still now.
Oh yeah. So we went through a substantial expansion.
Yeah.
I that.
Yeah, you don't put a column in unless you're serious.
Yeah, so design work started, I want to say like 22. And then towards the end of 2023, a lot of it got placed. A lot of the tanks, the column and everything got placed. And we were waiting for, some things to shake out to, finish the job. And then we finally had everything up and running in July of 25.
Okay.
I want to say it was the last week of July of 25. We had some staff from the manufacturer come in, and we went through a commissioning, as they would call it. And we ran our first, couple runs, and then we've been running nearly every day since then.
Yeah, I mean, you're running right now.
Yeah, we're running right now. It is a really awesome thing to see, and sometimes I'll laugh because me and my production manager will be working or whatever, and I'll just be like, that column is just dumping gallons of bourbon right now. You know what I mean? And
you almost have to be ready for it, right? It's
funny.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, let's talk about those. Are you primarily a whiskey maker? Is that?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely what built this place. Even though we've added, a ton of different things.
Right.
So yeah, we're mostly known for our David E. line of bourbon, but we have a large book, if you will, or a large portfolio of things we do. There's very little we don't do. I mean, we cover all the bases, of raw spirits, bourbon, rye whiskey, vodka, gin, rum. We do, the flavored vodkas. We have liqueurs, coconut rums. But the big thing that we added in about midway through 2024 was, our ready to drink cocktail line.
Oh, yeah.
And we do all those in-house. We have a permanent canning line, several tanks of various sizes. Our line has several different bases. Mostly ready to drink cocktails are vodka based, but we have we have bourbon based. We have tequila based, and we're actually legally allowed to package.
I meant to ask you that
here.
later, but let's talk about that. It's made in Mexico, right?
Yep. So not just anybody can import and package tequila and be able to label tequila, on their bottles, but we can because we're a legally approved importer and bottler of tequila products. We're specifically linked up with a distillery in Mexico, and we're registered with the government. And
wow,
we bring in tequila, in bulk, and are able to package for ourselves and other people as well that would like to.
So you're bottling the actual spirit, but you're also making RTDs with it.
Yep. So like our margarita and our Paloma, have authentic tequila in there.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. That was a whole world that.
Oh, I bet.
Completely. I wasn't. I knew nothing about. And then we, because the process is long to get set up to be able to do that. I mean, I think it was 3 to 5 year process.
Wow.
And then we were during the, developing the relationship with that distillery.
With the distillery, yeah.
They sent us just tons of, like high end tequila in like old decanter, like ceramic decanters and stuff like that. And just there's categories that I just knew nothing about, up until that point, Jose Cuervo, and, that's all I knew.
Yeah. It's a really complicated category.
I've grown to really enjoy it. And, it was fascinating.
Yeah, I didn't know anything at all about it until 2017, and man, there's a lot to learn.
Yeah, I mean that's like every category though.
That's true.
So we know American whiskey, but then when you get into tequila, that's a totally other world. You get into rum, down in the Caribbean, English naval rum, you name it, that's a whole other world. Canadian whiskey, whole other world.
So that's the thing. I have to fight this tendency to think, well, American whiskey's not that complicated. It is if you're used to making scotch or if you're used to making rum.
Yeah.
Turn it around. It's just that's what we know.
Yeah, like I've listened to interviews of, whatever do they call them, master distillers in Scotland,
Yeah.
right? And their whole thing, with they have a certain ratio of like germ, husk, and whatever,
Right.
and, you know what I mean? Because it has the optimal flavor, and it was just like blowing my mind.
Yeah.
Where it's like, we use, yellow dent number 2 corn,
Right.
you
Right.
know.
Right. Well, if you only got 1 grain to work with.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you got it.
you
Yeah,
got
I guess
to.
you got to
Yeah.
bend and twist and get as much maximum amount of complexity.
Yeah. That's I always get a kick out of people talking about the how much the mash bill matters, the different mash bills in bourbons. I'm like, the Scots have hundreds of different single malts, and they're all made from one mash bill, the same one. Yeah, it's really what you do. Yeah. When you we went over there and took a look at at your warehouse. Tell me what like when the spirit comes off the still. Walk me from there to, I guess, when it comes out of the barrel in the warehouse. What's going on?
Yeah, so it comes off the still. We shoot for around 135 proof.
Okay.
Coming off the still. Then obviously it gets registered, volume proof. We barrel at 100 proof.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
we go pretty low.
Yeah, that's pretty low.
But we over in our microclimate, if you will, it climbs a fair amount.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we fill the barrels, then we take them over to our warehouse that we call the car barn. We use we palletize our barrels. Save space, and then it sits there. You name it. We have different expressions that have different ages,
okay.
right? We have some pretty, a young rye, that's 2 years, but most of our bourbons are in the 4-year range, and
okay.
then we'll bring it back over to the production facility. I would call it the production processing facility, and that's where the barrels get harvested, blended together, filtered, and prepared for packaging.
Yeah. These are your bourbons are all, and I mean, it's by regulation, it's a new charred oak barrel.
Yep.
I saw in the portfolio you have at least one whiskey that's aged in used barrels. What's the? I mean, I guess why?
So we do have one product of ours. It's called the Blue-Eyed Six.
Yeah,
and that was one that they're used barrels because we when we first started our distillery back in 2015, how do you offer whiskey or whatever if you're 0 days old, right? So very many people,
everybody.
we sourced it, and it was just kind of a popular one for us.
Mm-hmm.
So even though we have plenty of whiskey where we may not necessarily, we don't need it in the same breadth as we needed it back then.
Right.
We still offer it because, people like it. And
Okay.
that's a light whiskey that was aged in, used barrels.
Yeah. Wow. And that's funny because light whiskey is all of a sudden much more popular than it had been for the previous 50 years.
Yeah, it does very well. It's sold enough. It always sold enough where we couldn't justify getting rid of it. And then actually it's kind of grown to become one of our top performers.
Yeah.
Especially in the fine wine and good spirits system.
Oh, okay.
So,
well, that's always good.
yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about the size of it. I mean, you've got a big operation here.
Yeah.
Are you selling outside of Pennsylvania? You're all just in PA for now, or?
So we sell the overwhelming majority of our stuff within the state lines. Our focus for a long, long time, and I think that's what really helped us and what really set us apart over the years, was the drive for on-premise sales. So you have on-premise and off-premise. Off-premise is the retail, right?
Take home.
On-premise is the bar and restaurant.
Yeah.
The bar and restaurant, we always tried to get on menu. So people are, you're getting paid, you're getting poured. People are tasting your product.
Right.
They're seeing the brand, on the cocktail menu. And that has helped us drive an immense amount of volume.
Yeah.
Now the big thing is, how do you reasonably, increase your volume? And the way for us going forward right now is out-of-state sales.
Okay.
So currently we've been in Maryland and DC for a couple of years, but we just launched Florida, Virginia, Delaware's imminent, and then I think the next ones that are about to fall are Alabama and California.
Okay. Oh, wow. That's a long way out there.
Yeah.
Still, if they want to buy it, why not?
Sure.
So it's not just a distillery, and I mean, we've touched on this already. You've got a pretty good-sized restaurant as well.
Yep.
Tell me about that operation.
So I'm not super involved with that operation. My biggest interaction really is ensuring that it's it's stocked.
Okay. Right.
As far as like retail goes, and they do a tremendous amount of retail sales, and then the bar.
Oh, you mean actually selling bottles out of the restaurant?
Yep.
For take home.
Yep.
Okay.
And then our bar uses the overwhelming majority of our spirits. We also do have a regular liquor license, but as far as base stuff,
it's all yours.
Yeah, I mean, they'll use or exercise their liquor license for some sort of obscure liqueur or whatever to make a cocktail. We don't.
Yeah,
we don't make Cynar here.
If you're making Manhattan, you're going to be buying vermouth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, I'll also execute tours, people, if we have groups or whatever come in, escort them, from the restaurant and then, give a tour.
Yeah. I guess it's a full service restaurant.
Yep. Yeah. Incredible food, full bar, retail sales. We have, I showed you the all seasons room.
Yep.
That, is heated and cooled in the summer, windows open.
And you get outdoor seating.
A little garage door, that it comes up, and you have little outdoor bar. And then we have the patio as well.
Yeah, yeah. So, attraction.
Yep.
Getting into the, I guess, why should people come here? Why should they drink your spirits?
I think we offer an incredible experience. I think everything we do is of high quality, and it's extremely fairly priced.
Okay.
And right now, price is on everyone's mind, and we've never raised our price. I'll take that back. We did raise our prices $2 for anything that was in the state store, but we had to do that because they raised their prices retail. Yeah. So that was kind of outside our hands. But outside of that, we've never raised our prices. We've always took on the responsibility of, increasing our buying power and getting creative to,
keep it where it is.
Lower our costs.
Yeah.
So we could keep it exactly where it is.
Wow. Okay. What is your favorite thing about Hidden Still or about your job that most people wouldn't know?
Being the master distiller, you're the head of production. So I actually really enjoy moving the chess pieces and looking forward and, projecting out and just kind of making sure it runs and making sure that clock goes 1, 2, 3, and it doesn't go backward. You know what I mean? So I like making sure everything runs predictably, and if something comes in sideways, then troubleshooting and figuring out how to let's change this, and just making sure everything runs efficiently. And then personally, as my roles changed and Hidden Still's changed, I enjoy learning back end part of the business and working with our CFO and.
Wow, that's not something I usually hear.
I know. It's weird. But it's, that's a fresh thing for me. In production, a lot of people don't realize, you do the same thing.
Sure.
Over and over and over. We mashed in over, you know what I mean? Before, back when it was just me and my production manager, me and him mashed in over and over and over. We transferred liquid and turned valves and, you name it. So we've done that over and over and over. So it's like, it's kind of fresh for me to, you know, be able to do those like new things.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see why that's appealing. What's your favorite thing about Hershey?
It's the sweetest place on earth. Right. But, I mean, it's super nice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
it's a pretty town.
It is a pretty town.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's cool. Like if I'm walking, you know, from the distillery and I got to go over to the warehouse, and you can literally see the roller coaster.
Oh, right. It's right here.
Coming down over. You hear the screams. And I will say the coolest thing is I get here pretty early in the morning. And before the hustle and bustle of the city or whatever, the chocolate smell is unbelievable. I mean, you get it during the day, but it's just different in the morning.
Yeah, there's nothing else going on. It's just there.
Yeah.
Huh. Pretty cool. All right, Coty, thank you. Appreciate it, man.
Right on. Like I said, thanks for having me.
Okay.
Forgot to mention where we did the actual interview. If you go in the break room at Hidden Still, there's a wall of bookshelves with whiskey and awards and grains and such displayed on them. Standard stuff, except when Coty pulled on one of the bottles, the middle shelf opened up into a secret conference room / bar. Pretty cool. And that's where we sat down and did the interview. After the interview, we went back to the distillery. Coty wanted me to try some whiskey they'd made with Egyptian White Mammoth Rye, a heritage strain that a seed grower had backsourced and grown enough to make 4 barrels of whiskey. It was delicious, rich, fruity, without the typical bracing, bitter herbal snap of rye. We tried 2 different barrels, and they were distinctly different. The one was much sweeter and full of fruit. Coty certainly has learned his trade. Drop by for a visit and try it out. You can also find Hidden Still whiskey at a number of central Pennsylvania bars and restaurants, too. It's a regular at Pine Grove Hall, for instance. I said goodbye to Coty and headed back to the car to pick up where I'd left off on visiting. Oh, right, I hadn't told you about where I was earlier. This was a full day. I left Millheim at 7 a.m. and drove down to Palmyra, the small town just east of Hershey. John Trogner had suggested I get breakfast at the filling station. It was a good call. I got my standard diner breakfast, 2 fried eggs, home-fried potatoes, and toast. They had sourdough, and I got that. It was busy, but the waitress was hustling and training 2 new servers as she did. The coffee was hot and fresh, and the breakfast was plentiful. The toast was actual sourdough, not just Texas toast with a bit more bite like you get some places. I did get there too late for the celebrated donuts. There were 3 apple fritters left in a large, otherwise empty display. Clearly the locals love them. I was going to go get an early bird beer at Gary's Bar, a Palmyra joint that opens at 8 a.m., but they were closed this morning. Really? I saw a guy mopping the floor, so I knocked. Jaden answered and told me the owner had an appointment they had to go to and they wouldn't be open till noon. But he let me in to look around and we chatted. Jaden's the bouncer. He's been there for 3 years and had nothing but good to say about the place, a pleasantly earnest young man. Gary's really looked quite clean for a smoking bar, and it had an adequate selection of beers. I was bummed I couldn't get an early beer and feel like a sinner, but maybe just as well. Another time, for sure. I like a good dive. I made one more stop before the Hidden Still interview, a place I've told you about before, Pronio's Market on Caracas Street. This is a different side of Hershey, the residential side. Caracas is a tree-lined street of neat and tidy homes, and Pronio's is the corner market. Has been since 1919. They do have the daily grocery stuff, but as I told you in episode 21, there are also an Italian deli with specialty foods. I was there for more meatballs, more on that later, and for a bottle of their exclusive olive oil from a single farm on the volcanic slopes of Mount Etna on Sicily. I should have bought some of their Tuscan sausage, but Kathy says there's enough sausage in the freezer. Maybe next time. After I went and did the Hidden Still interview, the next stop was personally joyful. Back in September, the Iron Hill brew pubs suddenly closed, and, well, I've been going to Iron Hills from the very first opening day in Newark, Delaware, almost 30 years ago. I know a lot of Iron Hill brewers, past and present, and I count them as friends. I've celebrated some of their many brewing competition wins with them. It just seemed crazy that Iron Hill was closed. Maybe it's even more crazy that 5 of them have come back from the brink and reopened. Center City, Philly, Wilmington, and Hershey have opened. Lancaster and Huntingdon Valley will be opening soon. Hershey opened just last week, on June 1st, only 3 days before I got there, and they were bustling. It was a bright sunny day, and the outdoor bar seats were open. Everyone seemed pretty jazzed to be there, employees and guests alike. I spotted Matt Gundrum down by the brewery and headed down there. Matt's the director of brewing operations for the whole outfit, and he's been getting the breweries up and running. Hershey had one beer from their own system ready, Hops of Love, a hazy IPA. The rest are coming in kegs from the already open breweries for now until Hershey gets caught up. Matt asked me what I wanted, and I already knew, no hesitation, Pig Iron Porter, one of the original beers they made since 1996. We grabbed 2 of those and sat down to talk. Here's that interview. I'm here at Iron Hill Hershey, which is open again. Talking to Matt Gundrum, you're the
director of brewery operations.
Yeah, you're making the beer. So, what happened? How did this come back?
So, basically, we got a call from a gentleman who loved our brand, right? Before we shut down, was an admirer of Iron Hill. And when it went through the bankruptcy, he did some inquiries. What would it take to revive this brand? After a few months, he was able to get a group together, and they purchased the brand, the IP, and were able to acquire 5 of the leases. So once they did that, they started thinking about who could run it, right? And they called a bunch of us back. So at the head of the company right now is me running the brewery, Alexis Lundeen, who runs our front of house department, and Walt Weddington, who runs our culinary department. We're all returning Iron Hill employees.
Nice.
So came back, we wanted to not just hit the, open the doors and do it again, but kind of reset ourselves back to, a more nostalgic time of Iron Hill and craft brewing. So we're kind of doing a little throwback with a lot of the beers we're bringing back, menu items, and just our approach to everything.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
when things were really working well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's good to hear. It's good to hear. What beers can we look forward to?
So, I brought back some old favorites. I brought back the White Iron Wit. Right?
Oh, okay.
Wheat beers are going through a resurgence right now,
Yeah.
so I brought that back. We brought out a new hazy beer, hazy juicy IPA for the opening called Kiss of Hops that we have on tap in Hershey. Azaka, El Dorado, and Strata is the hop bill on that, so nice blend there.
Yeah.
Obviously we're gonna get Russian Imperial Stout back in the tank soon. Get some barrel aged beers going. We're ramping up still, so we'll get to all those. But summertime, we're out here in Hershey. We're doing a lot of lower ABV, approachable, sessionable sort of beers. So you can, it's open container in this town too. You grab a beer, walk down the street.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Okay.
So,
that's good to know.
Yeah. So we're targeting that sort of,
Yeah, and your
list
location
right
is just phenomenal here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You can hear the roller coasters going by in the background.
Right. Everybody talks about the chocolate, the roller coasters. What do you want people to know?
That we're dedicated now to our craft, right? So world class beer, right? Iron Hill has always produced world class beer, and we want to come right back to where that was and stick to our guns with it. Scratch food, right? We've always had scratch kitchens. We make every dressing, every stock from scratch, and we're just putting all of our efforts into making sure that is upheld. And then hospitality, right?
Yeah.
We're really focused on the hospitality piece more than anything. And making sure our guests, when they come in, that they feel at home, right? Mm-hmm. You're not just walking into a restaurant; you're walking into something more than that.
Yeah, a place you're familiar and known. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
Matt, I wish you all the best in the world.
Thanks, Lou.
I really want to see this succeed. All right.
Yeah, so far so good.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Thank you. Boy, that was just great. I've always liked Iron Hill's beers and their attention to detail, and the idea of going back to basics is exactly what they need, what we need, in my humble opinion, to recharge craft beer. There was another opening in Hershey just this week. I didn't get to Reunion Cocktails at 1201 West Chocolate Ave, but the drinks look well selected and the cocktails imaginative, and there's a highball menu. Love to see that. Whoever gets there first, tell the rest of us what it's like. I walked out of Iron Hill and headed away from Chocolate Avenue back towards the Fresh Market. Don't be fooled by the UPMC medical building facade. There's a great food court and market in that building, too. There are too many places to mention, but you should check out the great cocktails at Midstate Distillery. I need to visit them for an episode. The delicious Lancaster County specialties at S. Clyde Weaver Smoked Meat and Cheese. Though I'm going to pass on the ham loaf. I just can't with that particular stuff. And our podcast besties at Shy Bear Brewing, of course. I did stop and met with Christy Serdal at Pico Piro, the Nordic kitchen and hot sauce spot. Christy told me that Pico Piro is Finnish for Little Devil, the name for her small batch hot sauces. I mean, did you know the Finns used hot sauce? She gave me a taste of Freya's Fire, her original sauce. There are 6 of them now, running all the way up to Freya's Furnace, and it was delightfully different. A solid heat, but with fresh herbal brightness. I bought some of her Viking butter with sage and sea salt. I just had some on my breakfast toast today. And she gave me a cardamom sweet roll, just out of the oven. Yeah, that was delicious too. Christy makes soups and meals to go as well, and will be expanding into a larger space in the market soon. Check out this unique producer. And that bit of food made me realize that I was getting hungry again, finally, after that big breakfast. So I headed down Park Avenue, along the tree-lined edge of HersheyPark, to the Parkside Hotel, where the sign proclaims, "Best food in town." I got an Evergreen Juice Juicy. Even Lou likes a hazy IPA now and then. And I ordered their pit beef sandwich. I'm pretty particular with pit beef, having had a fair number of rare beauties along the Pulaski Highway in Baltimore. The Parkside pit beef was good, excellent flavor, and rightly savage horseradish. The only ding I'll give it is that it could have been a bit more rare and juicy, but I struggle with getting that character myself. Good sandwich. Good stop. From there, it was an easy amble out Park Avenue to HersheyPark Drive and my last stop of the day, Trogues Independent Brewing. Now, we've been there before, way back in episode 3, the episode that really put the podcast on the map. No interview today, just that great smell of fresh brewing hops on the air as you walk in, wonderful array of to-go beer and merch in the gift shop, and, yeah, a fresh quickie of Sunshine Pills. Can't go to Hershey and not stop there. I did want to get to one more place, but ran out of time. The Hotel Hershey is right across the road and up the hill from Trogues, and the Iberian Lounge is, my God, such a retro classic. Gorgeous and fully carries through on the promise of the looks. Maybe it's just as well I didn't have the time. I want to go back with Kathy along and do this right. Don't make my mistake. Make time in your Hershey trip for this stop. Friends also recommended the solid service and upside-down pizza at Finici's, and the fresh pasta and house-made mozzarella at Piazza Sorrento. And they are friends I trust, so think about those spots too. But I'd been on the road almost 10 hours at this point, and it was time to make the run back to Millheim. The next day, I threw myself into writing that new book, and it was going well till we got to lunchtime. Kathy and I both realized we had nothing planned for dinner. We took stock, and I remembered that I'd bought peppers on Wednesday at Davies Market in Lewisburg, which is definitely going to be featured in an upcoming episode. Awesome place. So I thought about making stuffed peppers, but there's just so much to do. And Kathy suggested, why don't we take the meatballs I'd bought at Pronio's, pop them in the peppers, douse them with the leftover sauce from the night before, a jar of Del Grosso's extra tomatoes pasta sauce. Genius, girl. Then I remembered I had a bag of pre-cooked rice in the pantry and half an onion in the fridge. We could do this proper. I chopped up the onion and got it going in a skillet while I topped and trimmed the peppers. The chopped tops went right in with the onions, along with some red pepper flakes. While that was cooking, I put the rice in a bowl with some leftover fresh parsley, grated some sharp cheddar in, and sprinkled it all with garlic powder and Penzeys black pepper. I hit it with a good dose of Worcestershire sauce and stirred it up. I put a meatball in each of the 4 peppers, stood them up in the Dutch oven, and then packed each one with the rice mixture. There was a little rice mix left over. I sprinkled that and the remaining 4 meatballs in the bottom of the pot and poured the sauce over everything. The oven had preheated to 325 by this time, and I put the lid on the Dutch oven and set the oven timer for 2 hours. The whole prep had taken about 15 minutes, and they were delicious. I just had a leftover one for lunch today. I love stuffed peppers. I have a few of these pantry meals I can whip up pretty quickly. One of my favorites is an almost ready. On short notice, I can run up to Berkey's and grab a pound of ground meat, pork, beef, chicken, turkey, whatever, and a pack of pre-made mashed potatoes. Start the meat browning with diced garlic, salt and pepper, and then do the cheat supreme. I open a can of Manwich sauce, or lately a jar of Del Grosso's JoJo's Sloppy Joe sauce, now that I know about that. I stir in some frozen chopped onions and frozen peas, or whatever frozen veg we have that sounds good, and hit it with a dose of Worcestershire just for good measure. I like Worcestershire. When the meat's done browning, then we mix it all up, put it in a gratin dish or a Pyrex casserole dish, cover it with the mashed potatoes, and put it in the 350-degree oven. Dinner's ready in 30 minutes, and my friends, it is good and quick and easy. Well, what else? Well, the new book is suddenly going quite well. The first 3 chapters I did took longer than expected, a lot longer, and I was getting nervous. But then I knocked out 3 chapters this past weekend, and suddenly it's looking very doable indeed. Em has the first chapter illustrated, and we're working well together. Remember, though, it's not going to come out till next year. Going to get some Valley time in next week. One of our friends here is one of Penns Valley's few black residents. His Juneteenth celebration is coming up, maybe the whitest Juneteenth anywhere, and we're happy to join in. It's a barbecue, potluck, open bar that goes well into the night with a bonfire and fireworks. Why do a bunch of rural white folk go to a Juneteenth barbecue? You know, slavery was an evil stain on America's first 100 years, and we still haven't washed it all out. But isn't celebrating the end of it, no matter what date got chosen, a good thing? The end of slavery. Celebrate with your fellow Americans that we got there. Finally, all kidding aside, it would be nice to get a new sponsor. I do have one ask. I have to believe in your product or your place, and it has to be about Central Pennsylvania food and drink. You know, mostly. And if one of the Central PA tourism agencies is interested in picking up where Happy Valley left off, I'm definitely interested. I'm not cheap, but I am quite reasonable. Reach out to me at the show's email, seenthroughaGlass@gmail.com, or message me on Facebook or Instagram. We'll talk. That's the show. My thanks to Coty Edwards for the interview, and to David Stein, who dropped by just before we started. It's always good to see you again, bud. As always, you can find pictures for this episode on Instagram at Stag Podcast and on Facebook at Seen Through a Glass. If you're listening to the show on the radio at WSOV, there are over 80 more episodes to enjoy at Spotify or Apple Podcasts, Podbean, or any of the major podcast sources. Chocolate is a delicious treat, but it's also an amazing source of weird facts. For instance, there's a positive correlation between the amount of chocolate a country consumes and the number of Nobel laureates that country has produced. Correlation does not guarantee causation, of course. The cacao tree was first domesticated in present-day southeast Ecuador. Early evidence of chocolate consumption dates to 600 BC. Cacao trees can live for over 200 years, but they only produce usable cacao beans for about 25 years. It takes a cacao tree nearly a full year to produce enough pods to make just 10 standard-sized chocolate bars. These cacao beans must then be fermented for several days to develop the distinctive chocolate flavor. Cacao generally refers to the raw, unprocessed beans, while cocoa refers to the processed powder or mass. To produce cocoa, the beans undergo roasting at high temperatures, which results in a slightly sweeter flavor and reduced nutrient content. What else? Well, the blood in the famous shower scene in Hitchcock's black and white movie Psycho is chocolate syrup, watered down Hershey's chocolate syrup. Finally, one last Milton Hershey story. The chocolate maker and his wife had tickets for the maiden voyage of the Titanic in 1912, but when urgent business came up back home, they cut their vacation in Italy short and bought tickets on the Hamburg American liner SS America instead. Lucky break. Next episode will not be the big white whale I was hoping for, but I haven't given up on that one. I do have several other interviews set up, and we'll just see which one works out best. And you know, if you're interested in sponsoring the show, now's the time to let me know. Until then, thanks for listening. This is Lou Bryson on Seen Through a Glass from the smack dab center of the Keystone State.